Just to get even a basic scene shot, you're going to have to pay makeup artists, costume people, lighting and sound departments, set designers, people overseeing props and set dressings, location managers, a director, an assistant director, that's the person who actually shouts action most of the time, a director of photography, a cameraman, camera loaders, a focus puller, a gaffer, a best boy, and some sparks, that lot, basically, the electricians, a producer, a continuity brain, a catering truck, and some runners, and, of course, the actual bloody cast. Add that lot up across the course of an 8-week shoot, and before you know it, you're gazing in horror at a massive bloody bill. So what can you do to get costs down? Well, the easiest place to start is by changing the script. Doctor Who manages a cunning trade-off between expensive spectacle and comparative thrift. Russell T Davies trades off an episode filled with CGI swarms of Daleks by writing a relatively subdued and therefore cheaper episode for inclusion elsewhere. I recently wrote a script of my own, a load of zombie nonsense for another channel, and in doing so I learnt firsthand how budget constraints can force you to get a little creative. For instance, our zombies had milky white irises, which meant the actors had to be fitted with contact lenses. You're not allowed to use the cheap 25 quid ones for some boring medical reason about people being left blind, which meant we couldn't afford to kit out every single one with the special expensive eyes. The solution: cast a selection of zombies, then reuse them again and again, wearing wigs or hats to make them look different. Sometimes unforeseen budgetary circumstances mean you have to rewrite scenes. For instance, in the original script, this car was supposed to have a dramatic crash, but as the shoot approached, it became clear there wasn't enough money left to make that happen. So instead of crashing, it did this.
I don't know where we are right now, do I?
Fuck! Fuck! Clearly a massive improvement.
Left the bonnet. Pop it.
The availability of your cast is another major and expensive headache. For example, we only had one day to shoot scenes with Davina McCall as a zombie, so on another day some takes were done with a dummy at the window taking her place. Anyway, it turns out we needn't have spent any money at all, because in fact all you need for proper spine-chilling horror is a fireplace, a book, and this man.
Good evening. I'm Paul Ross. Are your windows bolted? Are your doors locked? Let's hope so, because I'm about to open my big black book of horror.
Yes, Paul Ross's Big Black Book of Horror is a terrifying journey into the unknown for Paul Ross. I repeat, Paul Ross, a name that from this point on will be synonymous with timeless horror fiction.
Little Chapel Wedding by Kathleen Croft. I had got quite friendly with my new neighbour Janice and had helped her unpack the smaller boxes of belongings after she'd moved in.
TV doesn't come much cheaper than this. There's only 2 camera angles and the occasional cutaway shot just to liven things up.
I was sitting on the verge of the A426.
But largely it's just Paul Ross reading from a book in the style of, well, in the style of Paul Ross.
I'm desperate to know more, but I don't want to pressure her. If you don't want to talk about it, just tell me to shut up. No, it's all right. I don't mind you asking. I didn't want to bore you with it. You must think I've lost the plot. Don't be stupid. Why would I think that?
I say reading. Actually, he only glances at the book a couple of times every half hour. Luckily, none of that manages to detract from the panorama of raw, blood-curdling horror he manages to conjure up.
Oh, my God, I whispered. The place is haunted. I watched her glide to the door and disappear through it, just like they do in films.
The level of detail is stunning.
You know that because of Darren's night shift starting this week, I stopped over and brought the kids back myself to save Darren the journey up and down on Sunday evening? Yes, you stayed in that little bed and breakfast on the Mumbles, the one Harry and I and the kids went to last year. Well, on the Saturday morning, I walked round the village, but there was nothing much open. The seaside doesn't have a lot going for it in late October.
There's even more detail when it comes to describing the clothes.
So the ladies were all wearing little hats, tilted forwards over one eye, and their dresses were knee-length in a sort of flowery silk crepe de chine. And oh, you should have seen their shoes.
But I can't see them. Paint a picture with words, Paul.
Cuban heels, very heavy and sensible. They all wore white gloves and carried little pouch handbags.
What about the bridesmaids?
Just one bridesmaid, wearing a very shabby puff-sleeve dress in turquoise taffeta. The skirt had a narrow band of ruche inset just above the frilled hemline.
I think this story was written by Gok Wan. The stories seem to have a lot of common themes. For instance, most of the time, Ross is playing a woman, which I warn you, can be powerfully erotic.
To a girl raised in a neat little pre-war semi, 1589 East Willow Street, Cedar Bend, Iowa, was a dream come true. Oh, Mac, I sighed as we stepped over the threshold.
Yeah?
You're crazy about it, aren't you? I nodded and hurled myself into his arms.
Then what?
We'd better make an offer then, he said, and kissed me slowly and thoroughly.
Oh, don't stop talking, Paul. And of course, like all good horror stories, they build to a truly terrifying climax.
This experience has made me realise how much I still love Darren and that I should never have left him. So I rang him last night to see if he feels the same, and he does. The long and short of all this is, I'm going back to Wales, to Darren. More from my big black book of horror after this.
Anyway, God knows what they were thinking when they made this. I mean, seriously, who the hell's going to tune in just to watch some unattractive, increasingly paunchy and irrelevant TV presenter just sitting around on his own in his house, just talking and talking and talking?
And now, here's Lisa Tarbuck talking about something wet and furry and close to her heart.
When I was younger, I was slightly obsessed with Tales of the Riverbank, which is also known as Hammy Hamster. It's set on, funnily enough, a riverbank, and it's very idyllic, and it's a bit hobbity in that you've got, you know, Ratty or Hammy's house. I don't actually, have you ever seen Hammy's house? But you've got Ratty's house with a little dock outside for him to moor his boat, and invariably you go inside and you see them planning an adventure or about to get up to something.
What is it? Oh, there's no time to explain now. Just forget about tea. We're going to GP's.
I think the main thrust of Tales of the Riverbank, there is an educational bit underneath, and it's mainly Hammy's got to learn something.
Are they building a gate? Or a fence? Or perhaps even a house?
I think I am partial to the slightly careless scenes where they put the boys in, you know, plastic no-engine jeeps or remote control ones. How the hell they got them to stay in there? I mean, these days you wouldn't be able to do it. Of course you wouldn't, and some might say rightly so. But there's sometimes that they just catch you in a way that can make you laugh your head off.
Hold on to your hat, Hammy.
Things like that onto those animals. I don't want to think about how they did it, but there's a particular shot of GP in a top hat on a sort of like a funny angle while he's being a photographer. That's just a little bit of magic. I think Hammy is my favourite character because he's a shy, retiring boy and a lot of questions to ask.
Why don't we have a picnic?
It was a dream of mine to maybe take him to Windsor Castle and let him loose in Queen Mary's doll's house. I hope I was a child when I watched this and I wasn't actually 17 or something. A bit obsessed and weird.
Oh no, that's all we've got time for this week on Screenwipe. And now, because we could do with some free publicity, here's a special offensive version of our end credits in case any of you feel like complaining to Ofcom. Please do. Good night.